So greetings, our beloved colleague and visionary leader, Karen. We so appreciate all that you do for so many. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Karen, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
First, thank you for that amazing introduction. I might poach bits of that. Our land acknowledgement at BAND is usually about referencing the fact that Indigenous Africans have been traveling the world since time immemorial. And in having so many Indigenous African artists who, as we know, didn't know they were Black until they reached North America, we like to connect that idea of indigeneity as an extra responsibility for supporting the Indigenous peoples on this land. Especially because of those of us that have been brought here through choice of migration and forced migration. But I love what you were saying about there about those who were not repaid or rewarded for their contributions, and in our case, especially our labor. So my background is history and education. So I come to my work and culture from that place of a core interest in how, and a core belief in how arts and culture has the opportunity to change the world, and how creating safe spaces for important but sometimes really difficult conversations is often best led by creatives. And that's everything from the cultural workers who are on the administrative side, who sometimes don't think they're creatives, but I know enough of them, and I know the hustle that sometimes they need to do to pull things together and fix things last minute. So I think anyone who works in the cultural sector is a creative. And then the layers, as we know, go there from the curators who are then helping an artist make sense of and helping to connect what an artist might create to connect that and help make sense of it to the world, but also position it in broader historical context. And then the artists who often make things just because it's pouring out of them. I think we all know artists who are researchers and super cerebral around the work that they make, but we also know people who they don't even know where it comes from, but it's just pouring out of them as a gift, I think, from the universe and from our makers to us to have a better understanding of ourselves, which is what I think great art and culture and arts and culture experiences do for the world. So that's kind of me. And yeah, I feel pretty blessed to get up every morning and do work that I'm interested in. I think a lot of us know people who don't love what they do, and maybe we're raised by parents who made sacrifices for their passions to pay the bills. So I am grateful every day to have the blessing of saying I love what I do, and I'd volunteer to do it if I won $1 million tomorrow. So that's a blessing.
Ashe, Ashe, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for your candor and once again your visionary leadership. So my next question is, what inspires you about your work? What has you curious right now?
So I didn't formally say it, but my work day to day, the most important work that I do, the stuff that drives me is as co-founder of BAND, Black Artists Networks in Dialogue. A lot of people know us just by BAND Gallery because of the gallery space that we operate in Toronto that's currently under renovations. We have a little Victorian house that we were lucky enough with a corporate partnership to purchase in 2016. My co-founders, Dr. Julie Crooks, who folks might know because of the visionary work she's doing at the AGO, Maxine Bailey for her leadership in the film industry in Toronto, is currently running the Canadian Film Center, and Karen Terrell, who's one of those quiet giants that works in the film industry on the marketing communication side, is one of these people that has a master powerful Rolodex that can find anybody anywhere. I love people like the Karen Terrells of the world because they walk through the world stealth. They're in rooms and you have no idea as to the power that they hold. but the co-founding of the organization comes from those powerful sister soldiers in the arts, working with myself to get it off the ground. And then I've spent more of my time, juggling day jobs, and then doing this work on the side. And we're finally at the point now where, to answer your question about what inspires me, it is the ability to see a next generation being brought into the circle and trained to lead. And some people find me weird for me to say this in my mid-50s, at 54, that I'm already thinking about that. But I think we all know globally what Black cultural legacy has or has not meant for us, where the gaps were because of not thinking about training the next wave of leadership, the things that started and stopped or seemed to stalemate at the same place. We were talking before this about Caravana, or quote unquote Caribbean Carnival in Toronto, as an example. Just what would it mean if the first wave of leaders had thought about, okay, who's going to lead this next? So I'm inspired by the young people like Claudia Pensaboa, Josephine Dennis, Natalie, assuming the team that I'm working with currently, the board members at Band, who pour into this thing, thinking about legacy, thinking about operational stability, thinking about that what our title means, that it's Black artists networks, the responsibility of understanding what that means as far as cultural networks, and the in dialogue, which is an understanding of creating opportunities for conversations about the impact that our culture has had, continues to have, and also could have and can have if we support not only the networks we're connected to, but the networks others are connected to. Because I think we're diverse people. We come from all over the world. If you live in a city like Toronto, you can't always tell whether someone is Indigenous African or African from the diaspora, and what that means as far as their diasporic presence, either through their presence in North America, specifically based on the descendants from forced migration here, or the Caribbean or Europe. Like, we're from all over the place. And so we are, and understanding that diversity is a real core part of, I think, our ability to do the work that we do. And that it means really that you're learning all the time, right? So you're inspired by the curiosity of others, which then inspires you because you're constantly learning in this work. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And I love the succession planning elements to Band and to your premise. My wife was playing a lecture yesterday morning. I'm in the dawning, and I heard a quote, and it was a Malawi quote, and it said, "The only thing more precious than your children is your children's children." And I think a lot of times when we think about future generations and that generational planning, it's so important. So once again, I appreciate the type of leadership and servants and leadership that you're coming with on approaching this work with. I give thanks. So my next question, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and how are you and your team working to overcome these challenges and barriers?
Right now, it's straight up about the money. It's not difficult, Victor. It is about the coin. And honestly, part of that is about, so Band is a hybrid model. People were side-eyeing, frankly, me mostly in the beginning, because we started this nonprofit organization. We didn't get our charitable status until 2020. So we came to that late. And some of that was, we tried, and then we actually, interestingly enough, brought in this brother, Yamoa Ape, who's amazing, and I'll recommend him to anybody. Ghanaian background, so he hails from your folks' part of the world. And he just understood how the system worked for the charitable situation, and helped us through it. But before that, we were, just a nonprofit, and we didn't feel the need to follow the rules that the system had set. So we did apply for grants, did build corporate partner relationships. We mostly secured grants at the federal level with Canadian Heritage. I'd worked there and kind of knew how the system worked and had relationships that helped me to decode some of the funding we secured. And the corporate, I won't lie, was easy. I was running Heritage Toronto at the time, and it was Julie who had done some stuff with TD Bank when they were building the TD Then and Now Black History Month program. And so that introduction helped to unlock some funding from TD in the early days. And then I had a really frank conversation with the gentleman at the time who was running Scotiabank's Ontario Regional Office about getting some support for the gallery. But instead of just doing the typical artist-run center, we did this weird hybrid where we would pay artists a fee, we would help them mount a show, sometimes give them money to help them put up a show, but they could also sell their work. And in the early days, because it was so new, people didn't get it. But now we're at the point where people call me to ask about how does this hybrid model work? And I remember, I think it was someone who's one of the curators or maybe the director at the AGYU at York during COVID. And as you know, the space we run out is a little house. And so we spent a lot of time in that backyard. We could have an exhibition, open the front door, sit in the backyard, open the back door and see straight through, kind of welcome people, and they could have an isolation visit in the space. But I remember her saying to me, I don't like, who told you it was okay to do this? And I was like, maybe it's a Jamaican in me. Maybe it's a Jamaican that, hails from Nanny of the Maroons. Half of my family side is connected to the Maroons in Jamaica. That's, were the rebels that fought the British into the hills. I just thought, what would benefit the artists? And so getting the artists to understand that hybrid model, I think, has been really beneficial to us. It introduces them to the sales component early, but it does mean that we're not 50-50, we're 70-30. The artists get 70% back. And then if they come back, because you hope that push gets them out in the world and they don't need to come back, but if they come back, it's 60-40 and it kind of never goes beyond that. They always end up getting more than they would with a traditional dealer. And we're at the point now where we're established enough. This year would be 14 years in the sector. We incorporated in 2010. That people know and trust us, and they know they're going to see great art. They know they're going to see young artists that they likely may not have seen before. So you always have an audience that comes, and we've started to really build a good collector base. But for us, the challenge is getting to the point where that collector base is more of us, because we want our folks, more Black folks, buying from these young Black artists as they're coming up and seeing value in that. And then being able to find that balance so that you could have the triad, which most charities aim for, which is a third, a third, a third. So a third public sector, a third corporate sector, and a third individual donor. That third on the individual side, we really want to be purposeful about that coming from our community. So I was saying to you before we got into the chat that we're trying to build that donor base by hoping to recruit an initial 50 young Black professionals who are interested in supporting the arts and willing to put $1,000 a year into a pool so we could get $50,000 to start and just start to have an impact that's driven by our community's vision and our community's interest in the arts. And I know those people are out there. I think we're just kind of sitting in that sweet spot right now with the building where the space, I think, will drive an interest in that legacy. So as I mentioned before, thinking about legacy is thinking operationally about who is the team that understands this so that they will also train the next wave of leaders when time comes. But beyond them, it's then how do you ensure that there's the financial resources to pay people a living wage? Because that's the other thing, right? A lot of cultural organizations give people opportunity to train, to test, to take some risks, to do really creative, interesting things, which you always can do in a small cultural organization. But they then lose them because they can't pay them well. So our dream is to pay the staff well so that they're able to stay, have long careers with us. And if they choose to leave, it should never be about the money. So yeah, the biggest challenge right now is the money to pay the team well. and also to just have a core stable operation once we come out of this $2 million investment in this tiny little Victorian house in Toronto. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I love the Susu Kagali Hagba partner box hand framework of the 50-50. It shows that band is leading
Am
in a
I allowed to be doing
finance
this
space.
on this podcast? Let me do this or this. Like the Jamaican in me is
we need
comrade
like
to the
some
gun
Zoom
front.
plugins to drop some, so to light some fire, but for me, it's so important because it's clear that band is leading in a social finance aspect in the arts and culture space. And that's so rare that folks are doing that. So once again, I appreciate you taking that leadership and making sure that not only are some of the practices that we've used since time immemorial are present currently, but you're actually taking a leadership role to ensure that you can advance ecosystems. And yeah, once again, I applaud your leaderships. Even the fact that you're in this Victorian home as an asset speaks to, once again, that model of being a leader.
Oh, the symbolism. When we painted it black, people lost their minds. And we're like, there's a reason it's black. The Black Victorian house with the Black Culture Organization. Yeah, straight up.
And last but not least, I agree completely. Like, I feel like a lot of times Black talent globally is always over-mentored and underfunded, undercapitalized, but over-mentored. And I think the fact that you're providing that balanced model, it once again shows the visionary leadership of BAND as an organization. So my next question is, do you have a set of key priorities right now? Does BAND have a set of, like key things that you want to share with the world right now? Or is some of this stuff still in the lab?
The key priorities are connected to some of the things that we've already talked about, which is getting out in the world to build the international part of the global network, because that networks in dialogue is about local, national, and international. And it first is about us engaging with each other, and then it's about engaging with the other. Because in our world, the other isn't us, it's everyone else. And so beginning with the fact that we are such a diverse people that hails from all over the world. The continent is diverse. If you're South African, your cultural landscape isn't the same as if you're in North or West Africa. So understanding that, I think is a key priority, and that's about literally getting out in the world. We were in and getting out in the world in a different way. I was having a conversation with the team when we came back from West Africa, from Abidjan, to go and meet with the artists who were showing in Contact this year in the spring. And they said to me that it was such a professionally, such a big thing for them to meet the artists in their local spaces, to connect with them where they hail from, to see the things that will influence the work that they make. And so again, and the goal next steps for us is really about how do you expand that global side. There is opportunities also to do things nationally. I think we've created shows that could tour and move around, and to think about touring differently, so that if we land, for instance, in Halifax, we might be at the Pier 21 Museum because we have the ability to connect with that level of leadership. But we have to also make sure that there's a partnership with the Africville Center. So it's to move into communities across this country, but always make sure that we're seeking who's the local Black community partner, so that whatever we're doing, we benefit from, or they benefit from, so that you pour back into community. I mentioned, again, previously before we started, being in Niagara region right now with Awa, which is a Nigerian sister, Sonia Amy's work with a space she has in downtown Niagara Falls. We're partnering to tour the Black Women Leadership photography exhibit with the institution, Rodman Art Institute of Niagara, but the anchor of that exhibit will be in a Black community space. And I spent the day yesterday helping with our contractor to build some of the infrastructure needed to influence what we do for the show, but also to leave something behind, so that she's then able to have the space to show other local Black artists, or to be a collaborator with us on other shows that tour. So I think that's the next thing. It's really about how are we widening this network that we've built, and how, as we move into broadening this network, are we making sure that we pull folks in, lift as we climb. So what knowledge and network opportunities can we share, so that you just pour? I think we just got to spend a lot more time pouring into us. And I'm super cognizant of the fact that in building band, I've been lucky enough professionally to have, you know, the quote unquote mainstream jobs, from running Heritage Toronto to working in the city's culture division on the museum before that, and then building Myseum. So I think the part of my brain that's the builder has this hyper awareness about what do you need to keep the growth going? What do you need to keep the team challenged so that they don't get bored? And sometimes I think at the leadership level, we think about what we need to be challenged, but we're not thinking about how do I make sure everybody else feels like they're growing and learning. That's working with this, because it is a collectivist process. There's things that I have no idea as to how to do. I know enough as a leader to know what I don't know, and to know that I have to trust to help find the best person to do it. But once I, in my gut, know that, and we talked about that before, about just trusting your instincts, then you got to release it and let them do their job, because then they get to shine and it's not about you all the time. So yeah, broadening those networks, getting out there in the world, not feeling guilty about it. I feel like, you know, other people have no shame about traveling and doing things all the time. And sometimes we feel like we have to explain why we're doing it. No, we're global people. We need to go see our people. We need to meet them where they're at, and we need to pull them into us where possible. So that's kind of the next thing, is getting out there in the world and increasing opportunities for dialogue and for broadening the network, so that we can impact the Black cultural and African diaspora cultural landscape locally, nationally, and globally. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I feel your work is healing our culture, because there's so many elements of our culture that needs healing, and your work is healing our culture. So thank you for all that you do for so many. It is a big job. I know.
You scared me with that. Okay.
So what is your
Sorry,
ultimate
go ahead.
goal, and what does success look like to you and your colleagues?
The ultimate goal for me is to get to a place where, one, I could have one job, because right now I'm still juggling other things. To, as I said, the money's always an issue. So I'm lucky enough that I can consult and work on other things. So it'd be nice to have that, if I choose to do other consulting work, that is to also help our people. So to just be in the soup of us in my work, but also to know that the legacy is secure. I to know that you've done it the best you can, and you have confidence in the next wave of leadership to take the torch, to hand the baton over, and know that things will be good. And it doesn't mean things will be as you would have wanted them to be, right? Because organizational change, what the ROM or the AGO it was in its beginning is not what it is now, but it doesn't mean that it's not stable and have as a long-term stable legacy. So it's starting to pull together at the board level as a spirit of building endowments. And I say spirit for a very specific reason, because I think if you kind of have to believe things before they become. I'm one of those people that I think we underestimate our ability as Black folks to manifest, and to manifest success. You have to believe that something will be endowed before it gets endowed. So for me, success is believing those things, and then pouring the energy into manifesting those things, to then be in a position where I could sit back and say, this is okay. Like, if something happened to me, my people, you know, live long, but if for some reason I'm not one of those, my grandfather lived to 99. So there's longevity in the family. But if for some reason that doesn't happen, that I wouldn't have to worry that things wouldn't be stable. So that's what success looks like. And I'm mostly there, definitely there with this leadership team that is with us at the staff level. There's some work to be done at the board to fill that spirit of legacy, philanthropy, endowment. But I also think, as we know, things happen in phases, right? For those of us who are builders, you know the phases. So there's a certain wave of team that gets you to a certain place, and then there's another wave that gets you to the next level. And so I think we are lucky, like they're brilliant young professionals who've poured time and energy into the build, but we don't necessarily have the fundraising chops on the board yet. So that is I'm looking forward to that next, because I'm super optimistic about the work we've done, the networks we've built, and I feel good that we're on the right path for me to be obsolete, basically, for me to be like, yeah, I don't need to be here. I could be here and maybe they'll let me do something, but I don't really need to be here. And that's the goal. It's like the biggest compliment I received from colleagues, which is one of the reasons for my brain shifting around the way I worked at Band, was they said, and it was Nicole Sworn, that every time I see her, she says it to me, the consultant, she says, every time I see stuff from Myseum, I'm like, you built that and it's still going. She goes, you know how many people build things and they leave and it falls apart because they didn't actually build it to exist without them. And I thought to myself, that we do that for others. We need to do that for ourselves, because a lot of us are working in these institutions that are serving broader communities at large, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm interested in how we do that for us. So yeah, how do you make something, build it, and work with a team to make it so functioning, and take place and survive, and it's positioned, frankly, to thrive.
That's absolutely remarkable, and I couldn't agree more. Succession planning and building things that outlive you, that's the ultimate goal, I think, for anyone that's in a service leadership role. And it's so rare that that happens in our community, like so rare. So once again, I applaud your visionary leadership, your candor, and yeah, just everything that you do, fam. Like, just remarkably impressive. And I'm actually not surprised at all in terms of everything that you're saying. So my last question: do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
I'd say it's a call to action, which is to, if you are interested in culture, to just seek out a way that you may be pouring into an AGO or a ROM with your membership, and to think about what would happen if that was going to Band, the NIA Center, Be Current, Obsidian. Like, it doesn't have to be Band. As I said, it's about that cultural ecosystem. And so if you're in Toronto, what are the other places that you could be supporting or volunteering, or if you split some of that money, just because I think there's a lot of folks in our communities who are interested in culture, but they're very much spending their time in and resources pouring into mainstream institutions. And again, I would not say there's anything wrong with that. The presence of a Dr. Julie Crooks at the AGO is essential, and we need more of that. We need to be present in all realms of our societies. We are, taxpayers who contribute to the greater good. So we should enjoy all of it, all of the spoils of our labor. But to make sure that some of that also comes into community, I think is so important right now. And also, if there's an opportunity for you to help an individual artist, and when I say help, I mean help. It's not just buy the work, but say, hey, is there an opportunity that you are is there something you're trying to do right now that I could help? And maybe you get your 3 friends together, and instead of buying art, you say, we're going to pull together and give you $3,000 so you can buy that plane ticket and go somewhere to travel, research, do a residency, and just to kind of build yourself up. Because I think artists need that. They need that research for professional growth. They need the travel. And our artists, I think in particular, Black artists need to get out in the world if they are Canadian. It will literally save their soul. So I think and our cultural workers, our curators, just our creatives. So, but I think the easiest place to start is a call to action, because people very much understand the impact of that transaction of supporting an artist because of what they build. So could be a designer, And so when I say art, I mean everything. Like it's could be a designer, it could be a dancer, it could be a painter, it could be someone who sculpts, like just an artist. Because we always say to the artists that come through band, we don't like to say that they're a photographer. We don't name their medium. We say they're artists, and the particular practice we might be showing is blah. Because in 5 or 10 years, they may be doing 3 or 4 other things within their overall growth. So yeah, for me, that call to action would be, can you pour into a community organization that would benefit from your help? And that's your time or your money, or both, if you can. And can you pour into an individual artist or creative who would also benefit from, again, time or money? Because sometimes it may be the transaction of supporting or helping them with something like writing a grant, or if they need help with taxes or whatever. Just what could you do to pour into us? Because that collectively, I think, would make us all better.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for everything you represent. You represent us well. You make our ancestors proud. And yeah, I'm looking forward to rewatching this interview with my daughters. So because he represents us so well. So thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you.
And we'll close the way we began this interview by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Karen. We so appreciate you.
Thank you, Victor. Thanks for this opportunity. I am in amazing company. As I said, I've watched some of the other interviews. It's amazing work. Congratulations on what you're doing. And look forward to connecting offline on the things we can do. I'll see you in Ghana.
Ashe, indeed.